what kinds of things begin to change in terms of the kind of fitness we should be pursuing, the kind of exercises that we should be doing?
Sure. And you just you hit the nail on the head. The reality is that our bodies have changed. I talked to someone this morning. She said, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I am on the treadmill every day." She said, "I'm eating 1,200 calories a day." And I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness," right? And I'm doing all these things, but nothing's working. This was somebody who's not a little person. I mean, she's tall, she's 5'9", and it's because what she's doing is what she would have done when she was 20. Instead of what she should do at 50, I realized was that we have to treat our bodies different because our bodies are different. And it's okay.
Hi, I'm Glennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. It's that time of the year where everyone is thinking about, okay, what can I do to get fit real quick because I want to fit into that swimming suit, or I want to go on vacation, or perhaps I have a graduation to attend, a wedding to attend. It's that time of the year. But actually, no matter what time of the year it is that you might be listening to this podcast, what we're going to be talking about is relevant. And that is the whole idea of fitness, especially after 40. What things are different? What things are changing? What things do we need to change about our approach to fitness? And what things maybe do we need to add to make sure that we're doing what's right for our bodies? That's why I'm very excited to introduce to you someone who definitely knows, Kelly Howard, who is the author of Fit, Active, and Ageless for Life. She is a fitness consistency expert with a touch of adventure. And I want to find out what that adventure part is all about. But thank you so much, Kelly, for being here today on the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone listening. Truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's get right into about this whole issue of fitness. This is a topic that just never seems to go away. There's so many questions about what's right, what's not right. So many issues around how our bodies change after 50. And since I've been doing this for about almost 17 years, I have seen a real shift in terms of the conversation, with people finally talking about the fact that what we used to do in terms of getting fit in our 20s and 30s may not be what we need to be doing in our 40s and 50s. So let's start there. What kinds of things begin to change in terms of the kind of fitness we should be pursuing, the kind of exercises that we should be doing?
Sure. And you just you hit the nail on the head. The reality is that our bodies have changed. Because, the biggest reason is that we start losing muscle mass. Okay. That is just a part of life, and it doesn't have to be. Okay. So what happens a lot of times is people will come to me, and I talked to someone this morning. She said, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I am on the treadmill every day. I'm eating." Now, this was somebody who's not a little person. I mean, she's tall, she's 5'9". She said, "I'm eating 1,200 calories a day." And I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness." Right. And I'm doing all these things, but nothing's working. And it's because what she's doing is what she would have done when she was 20, instead of what she should do at 55. And it's just and it took me the same thing. Like, I had an awakening about all of this. But what I realized was that we have to treat our bodies different because our bodies are different. And it's okay. We just have to play in a different sandbox.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned the fact that you've been on your own journey and that you've gone through this too. When did you have an example of times maybe when you didn't do such a great job with your overall fitness?
Oh, it's life, right? Up, down, up, down. Probably my biggest wake-up call, I was about 50 at the time.
Mhm.
And I was doing all the things like we all do, like busy women do, right? Running a new company, taking care of a mother who had an heart attack and fell, redoing a home, just all the stuff, right? And so I thought that I could get by on being a weekend warrior. That was my thing. Like I can sit on my back end for 12 hours a day and work, then run down and take care of my mother, then run over and take care of the house. And on the weekends, I'll just, get in shape a little bit. But what happened was I woke up one day and I couldn't get out of bed. And it was not because I was tired. It was because I was in so much pain that I literally crawled to the bathroom and crawled back to bed. And I went, oh, well, I must be dying. Right.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
But it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was in the back of my head the whole time was that little voice going, no, Kelly, your body can't do the things it used to get away with. And so I had to learn. I just had to learn. And it was ironic because I was in the health outdoor business at that point, right?
Right. You've been doing this for 25 years, so you have a lot of experience.
Exactly. And I'm just like one of those moms. Do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
And finally, I had to do as I say.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when you talk about you had to do as you say, what say you? What do you say when these kind of things?
So things that changed that I had to shift for me. One of them was I had to make a priority. I could no longer keep putting myself off, my health off, my physical well-being off, thinking that everyone else came first. Because what I realized was that if I didn't start making myself a priority, all those people that I was putting first were going to have to be taking care of me. Right. So number one. Number two was I started realizing that I talked a great game, but I wasn't playing a great game. So my talk was, you need to have things to look forward to. You need to, you need to make plans. And instead, I'm making plans for, everybody else. So I started really diving in and going, what do I want? Like, what do I really want? What do I want in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and longer? What do I want to be able to do? And what came out of that was I went, oh, well, that's simple. I want to be able to do all the things that I love to do for as long as I possibly can. So that led to the next step, which was, okay, so what are you doing now that isn't taking care of that? One of them was I wasn't focusing on any mobility in my body, right? As we add years to our body, we add layers of, I'm not going to say injuries, but just like, we've just kind of like been rocking and rolling in these bodies for a long time. And instead of taking care of our joints, we just expect them to keep going. So I started really caring for my joints and really learning about that. I got back into weights. I used to do weights. I was one of those girls that I was in the gym when no one else was in the gym. No other women were in the gym. And I got back into it. Not like a monster, but like somebody who needs to have a functional fitness. And the other one I did, and this always surprises people, is I cut back on my cardio.
Oh, yes. Please talk about that because I'm trying to get the word out about that. I have friends who, they're getting in shape for the reunion, the wedding, whatever. And so they're going hard in the gym and everything else. And I had experience with that myself this past summer in 2023 when I went to visit my daughter in Miami, who is a fitness guru, but she's also an ex-collegiate athlete. She ran track and she also did cross country. So she trained. So when I was taking pictures down there, I noticed like, 10 pounds is like way too much that the camera's just adding. Now I look like 20 pounds overweight. So I said, I got to do something. She says, Mom, I know exactly what to do. So next thing I know, I'm in the gym doing the ropes and, doing all this stuff. Now in the back of my mind, wait a minute. I usually tell people not to do this because the cortisol levels, but it feels so good. Blah, blah, blah. Well, bottom line is I did lose some inches. I did pack on some muscle, but I really didn't lose the weight like you would have thought I should have been losing because my cortisol levels were going up. And my muscle memory is coming back because I'm a dancer for many, many years. So my muscle memory was coming back, but not in the same way as the effort. I mean, I was in there 3 times a day,
oh my goodness.
Stuff. Yeah. So why is that? Why did it not work? Tell us about cortisol and going hard and all that.
Well, it's a couple of things. One of them is definitely what you're saying. The cortisol, as we go long and hard, we are raising that, right? The other thing that happens though, is that and this happens to a lot of us who are what I call, cardio addicts. I am like totally. I love to go long and hard. I just do. But if you go for roughly longer than an hour, let's say you're doing a dance or a bike ride or a long hike or something like that, and you're doing this consistently, what you're doing is you're actually starting to break down muscle. And when we break down muscle, now we're not going to be able to burn the fat, right? Because we've broken down muscle instead. That we think that cardio is helping us, but it's taken away. The other thing that it's doing is that there's that point, and that point is probably at about different for everybody, but let's call it 50, probably a little bit earlier than that. But it becomes harder to add muscle back on.
Yes.
And so we don't really want to lose that muscle.
That's right.
Now I still go play hard, but not all the time. Right. I mean, and this is something, and go back like during COVID, this came screeching home to me during the pandemic, because so at that time I was in very good shape. I was doing a lot of long distance cycling, but I also was doing a lot of everything else I needed to be doing, which included community and, meditating and all the things that, keep you kind of grounded. And I spiraled out of control, right? Like the rest of the world. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on with us? What's going on with us? So stop the gym because the gym was shut. Stress levels immediately go up. And then I get on my bike or go for hikes for hours because I didn't know how else to deal with it. And what I noticed, and so I'm 63 now. So at that point, I was just turning 60. What I noticed was that the instantaneous loss of muscle and gain of weight around my stomach, which I'd never had before, was almost comical. Almost, but it wasn't.
Like overnight. It's just like
overnight. And that was the cortisol, the stress, the over pushing. And it was an interesting thing that I've been working to reverse since then. So it's it's
really interesting too, because so many women are suffering from this thing of having that abdominal weight gain and doing all the belly buster, the fat burning tablets, some people are actually doing the crunches and all that stuff. And you and I both know that's not what works. So what does work, Kelly, in your opinion, when it comes to that extra flab of fat that gathers after a certain age?
So, okay. My first one is sleep it off. Okay. I mean, that is one of those things that I have a very good friend, and her father literally taught her, you'll sleep when you're dead. Right now, you need to work. And I'm like, that explains a whole lot.
Oh my God.
It explains a whole lot. It explains why she gets up at 3:30 in the morning and goes running by 4. And every year she's gaining more weight. It's losing that sleep that we need. So sleep's a big one. Another one is stress management. Another one is really it's sugar. It's managing the amount of sugar you take.
Now, when you say sugar, are you talking about white sugar, or are you talking about all sugars, including the sugars that we get from our fruits?
Oh, okay. That right there could be like, if I throw that out, some people are just like, oh my gosh, we need to fight, right?
Or hang myself, I give up, right?
I'm done with this. So in general, the American Heart Association says that we should have about 25 grams of sugar a day and no more. That includes fruits. It includes your processed carbs. It includes all the stuff. You can get there really fast. Okay.
Very fast.
Very fast. And when it comes to fruits, okay, let's just talk about fruits for just a second. I have had clients that have fought me like tooth and nail on the fruits. Well, I eat a fruit smoothie every morning, or I drink a fruit smoothie every morning, and it has, X, Y, Z. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of, that's a lot of calories, or not calories, but a lot of grams of sugar. So finally we get them on a glucose monitor. I'm like, fine, do whatever you want to do, but you got to do your glucose monitor. And they see the spikes that they're getting. So they're willing to come back down to something a little bit more reasonable. A couple pieces of fruit a day. not, not blending 17 pieces of fruit and thinking that it's going to be good.
Yeah, it adds up really, really fast. It's so funny. I have one of my clients was talking about something that she heard on television, and the lady was complaining that she wasn't losing the weight and she was doing these fruit smoothies and everything else. And he was like, well, that's the reason why. It's all the sugar in the fruit smoothies. Might be healthy stuff in there, you know. And I guess we're not saying that don't ever do fruit smoothies. We're not saying that.
Right.
Right. You're saying, just be aware, and maybe instead of every single morning, maybe, once or twice a week, that's your little treat, have a fruit smoothie. Now, I know that
Exactly.
you are really keen on consistency.
Mhm.
Why is that important? And what's the secret sauce? How do you establish consistency, Kelly?
Okay. So everyone has consistency in something they do in life. Okay. People will say to me, I'm not consistent. I'm like, yeah, you are. I mean, you're consistent in something you're doing. So if you can recognize where that thing is that you're doing that you're consistent at, whether it's a bad habit or a good habit, I don't really care. You realize that, yeah, you can do consistency. The reason consistency matters is because it's that accumulation of small steps over a long period of time versus that start big, lose 30 pounds in 30 days kind of thing. And then people crash and burn. We crash and burn from the big, huge changes that we force on ourselves that we can't sustain. But if we start small, we figure out what consistency looks like for us. It's not a sexy thing, right? Like I always say, you're never going to see Cosmo saying, the 13 steps to consistency. No, but those little steps are going to turn into long-term, huge, huge changes.
Absolutely. It's small incremental steps of change. And that's part of my philosophy of practice when I'm working with my clients is not that we're not going to attack everything at once and figure out why you're not feeling well. We're going to take a look at your overall lifestyle and take a look at where we can make some small incremental changes. And it's interesting. What happens a lot of times is as you begin to make those small incremental changes, you begin to see some improvement that you like. And then you look for other opportunities to make changes. And next thing you know, you've made some significant changes. Like, for instance, I'll tell someone, okay, I just need you to increase your water by at least a couple of glasses a day. So you think you get 3 glasses a day? Let's go for 5 glasses a day. So they start drinking more water. They're more hydrated. They have more energy. Their skin starts looking better. Things start happening. And then next thing you know, when the soda goes by that they could have because they've had their 5 things of water, like, well, maybe not. Why don't you go ahead and just give me water with lemon instead? You begin to look for other opportunities for that incremental change to be even better. And there's something else I was thinking about too when we were talking about, all the sugar and stuff that's in our foods. That's really a good vote, isn't it? For preparing more foods at home, right?
Oh yeah. If you can do more healthy foods at home, and when I say healthy, I think of healthy foods as anything that is vibrant to your world, right? Anything that has been grown or raised in a sustainable, healthy manner. When you start bringing these in, and I'm not against bread. I am not against bread at all. But when you eat the bread, eat the best you can. Right? Bring all the best stuff in and enjoy that. It changes the way we eat. If you, like if somebody wants to go through a drive-in and get I don't know, a hamburger, and you've got that white bread that is really kind of scary stuff, and and everything else on it that there's nothing there that is exciting, really. It's just a filler. So look for foods that aren't fillers, but fill you up in your soul and your body.
Right. I always say go for stuff that is nutrient dense and not chemical dense or dense in words that you can't even pronounce. Well, the fact that you're even buying food that's in a package or in a can is the first step to let me see what else is in here, and many times you'll find, oh, maybe this is something I don't want to get, or maybe this is something I can prepare myself. And the interesting thing about fat and losing weight, the more toxins you have in your fat, the more difficult it is for you to lose that fat and to lose the weight. So
it's true. See, I don't know
that is
this.
true. Yes, that is true. That's why it really helps to try to watch the toxins you take into your system and not to be fanatical about it, but just to be able to take a look at the things that you're putting in your system and your environment in general, because the toxins hide in the fat. That's where they hide. And
Yeah,
it
I
makes
guess you're right.
that, it makes it that much tougher for you to remove the fat. So there's little tweaks and things that we can do to make the adjustment. But, I am so glad that you decided to join us here today. I just love your energy. We had a couple of hits and miss trying to get together, but it was definitely worth it. And I want to encourage all of you who are listening to Kelly to make sure you take a look at the links there on the show page. She has a wonderful book that has so much information about the importance of being consistent. It's called Fit, Active, and Ageless for Life. I love that ageless thing. I never have been one to subscribe to the anti-aging thing, but the ageless stuff, I'm all for that. Absolutely. What made you decide to write that book?
I don't know. Okay. That's the reality. It's just one day I woke up and I was like, oh, I need to write. And I knew exactly what I needed to write about. And I guess it probably came from all the women. I deal 99% with women, all the women that I've met and talked with and who think at times that maybe it's time to slow down. Maybe, this particular injury or whatever is might be the end of everything. Like there's all these things that go through our heads. And I don't believe any of them. I do believe that the more we move and the more we learn how to move properly and the better we eat and the more we have people like you in the world who, are subscribing to like be vibrant, follow your intuition, do the right things, right? The more we do that, the greater and bigger our worlds get. And the more we give in and we go small, the smaller our world gets.
Absolutely. Well, wow. Perfect advice. For those of you who missed part of that, back it up and listen to it again. Perfect advice. Some of the biggest solutions to some of our biggest problems are actually really small incremental things that will add up to a really big result. So Kelly, Howard, thank you so much for being with us on the Vibe Living podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to finally meet you.
I know.
And thank you to everybody.
Thank you. And thank you. Yes, thank you, everybody who's listening to the podcast. I know you have lots of podcasts that you can choose from, 50 million podcasts out there, but thank you for making the V.I.B.E Living podcast in the top 10% of Apple podcasts. And I hope that you'll come back. And in the meantime, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. I've got some great interviews lined up, and I don't want you to miss one because it's all about helping you to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.
One sec.
Oh, Kelly, thank you so much for, go ahead, take a sip, take a sip.
I'm good.
Thank you for so much for interviewing on the V.I.B.E Living podcast. It was great. You have so much wisdom. And for those of you who haven't listened to the podcast yet, listen to the podcast. This is the bonus interview we're in right now, but thank you for spending some time in the Vibe community. I, of course, have to ask you this question because I ask it just about of all my guests. How do you vibe? You're very vibrant, and how do you enhance your intuition and what it is that you do with your beauty? Because your skin is beautiful. I mean, you look great. And how do you stay empowered to keep doing what you're doing?
Okay. So how do I vibe? I'll start with that one. I play. I think play is one of the most important things. I like to play typically outdoors. And typically for me, I like to play doing things that I love to do, hiking and biking and kayaking and really getting outside and enjoying myself. That is probably the thing that keeps me moving, going, and loving life more than anything. And that kind of leads into like the whole idea of intuition. I find my intuition when I find my center. And I'm either finding it from meditation or I'm finding it from being outside and just, enjoying whatever it is I'm doing with the people I'm with. My theory is always like, I'm looking for fun. I'm looking for fitness and I'm looking for freedom in life. And those things feed me. Yeah.
Yes.
And so Those are my favorite ways of just like starting that whole vibe feeling. I do every morning. I guess every morning is not a fair statement because can't make it a universal statement, but most mornings I wake up, I meditate, and I usually meditate for a half an hour or so, and I journal. I have been doing that since I was like probably since the day I learned how to write. And so it keeps me going the direction I want to go. And it always brings me back to my center. And then as far as just like you asked about skin, I have to tell you, I was sitting here looking at you going, oh my gosh, I've got to know her secret.
You know what? I'll share with you my secret.
Yes.
It isn't much. I am an oil girl. I haven't used any soap since I can almost say the year, since about 2016 on my skin at all. I use a combination of olive oil, coconut oil, and a little bit of avocado oil with vetiver essential oil, lavender essential oil, lemon essential oil, and rose essential oil. And that's what I use for my cleanser. That's what I use for my moisturizer. And I use a scrub from time to time, usually a brown sugar scrub, which is a combination of raw sugar and white sugar with a little bit of vanilla, which, believe it or not, the real vanilla, not the imitation vanilla, but the real vanilla bean can have healing qualities for the skin, and a little bit of lavender in there. And I just scrub it and use it that way. Sometimes I'll use a coffee scrub, because it's got little fine granules, and that's it. Nothing fancy at all. I've noticed a couple of things with my skin. Like this morning when I woke up, I was like, oh, I see this low, at the aging process, you begin to get darker places that you didn't have before.
Right.
So, it was a little darker right there. And my husband said, well, no, that is where you had that chemical burn that time. And I was like, oh, that's right. And now it's just finally, it's showing. But
wow.
Years ago, I was allergic to hair dye. And I didn't care. I was going to dye my hair anyway. And I ended up in emergency because my esophagus was closing. And that was before they had, epinephrine shots back then.
Right.
They just carry with you. And I actually had burned myself a little bit, So my family was like, Mom, and that was like about 16 years ago. So it's really interesting. My journey has been gradual. My being natural in my hair color was not some great statement. It was because I'm allergic to hair dye. But, just like we were talking about in the podcast, you do one little thing, you're like, my hair is I'm not having any of the break off or some of the other things that seem to happen with women as they get older because of hormonal changes and also because of products we use where our hair just says that's enough, no more, So that's why I said, okay, maybe this is I'm doing that. Let me take a look at what's going on with my skin. Is there anything differently I can do with my skin? So I just gave up all of the beautiful, wonderful products they have available for women if you want to do that, and decide to use all natural. And I am so proud to say that in, I guess, about less than 60 days, I will be 67.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Wow.
I'm always the oldest in every room, it seems like now.
Well, you're not much older than me, so we can just be like holding our space in those rooms.
Right. Absolutely. But that's really long way around to say that I try to keep things as natural as possible. And I love your gray hair. I absolutely do. I belong to a modeling agency called Celebrate the Gray.
Oh, wow.
And yes. And the lady who founded the agency, she, had this vision of beginning to educate advertisers as to why they want to take advantage of that $19 trillion worth of purchasing power that our demographic represents. And so now she has like 300 gray hair models. When I got with her, she had less than 100. And I've gotten jobs because of my gray hair. So there you go. There you go. So I think absolutely beautiful. And your skin does look good from you. It looks great.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I have to admit, Zoom filters help.
Well, it's a filtered world. I know. So when you finally meet someone, you're like, oh.
I know. I said one day, I want to look like I do behind my Zoom filter.
Well, you're still beautiful. And thank you so much, Kelly, for coming on and sharing with our group. It's been wonderful getting to know you. And you are truly a gift.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to see where else we go.
I can't either. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.